I'm going to point out today and talk a little bit about the biggest mistake that First Amendment auditors make. And I'm not bashing First Amendment auditors, okay? I subscribe to a whole bunch of them. I've watched hours of their videos. I support them 100%, okay? But they make a common mistake, a logical common mistake, a common mistake of logic when they do this auditing. Not every one of them. Like the guy at Amagansett Press, he doesn't bring this in. There's some auditors that don't use this form of logic, but a lot of them do. And the logic is, I paid for this, therefore I own it. I paid for it with my tax money, therefore it's mine. I own it. This is Bay Area transparency talking right here.
Obviously, I can calm this down for you. State property is funded by who?
See, state property is funded by who? By me, by the taxpayer. Therefore, I own it. Therefore, I own it. You know, in this one right here, which out of control cop. I mean, this guy is just, the worst of the worst.
I'll stand where I want to stand.
He says, get away from my car. And the auditor who's holding the camera goes, this is our car. See, once again, the logic is I paid for it with my taxes. Therefore, it's my car. It's our car. Okay. And this is the biggest mistake in logic that auditors make. This is not your car. This is not your property. I 100% agree with the auditors in and of the fact that they paid for it with their tax dollars. But one of the flaws in the argument is you're forced to pay for it. You didn't voluntarily pay for it. You didn't purchase anything. They took the money from you. This guy right here, if you didn't pay him his money, he would show up and violence you. They would show up and violence you. A tax collector, when a tax collector wants his money, he's going to employ violence to get it from you. Taxes are not voluntary. You have to pay taxes or you will be violenced. They will come and take whatever they want to. They will come and take your body. They'll take your property. They'll take your car. They'll take whatever they want to take. And I mean they, the people who you owe the money to, who are taking it from you forcefully. And there's nothing you can do about it. So you didn't pay for it. They took your money and paid for it with your money. But that also gets down to the fact of whose money is it? Is it really your money? If you look at a Federal Reserve note, do you own it? Just look at it. And a Federal Reserve note is commonly called a dollar or a money or something like this, but it's a piece of paper that the Federal Reserve owns, not you. It says this can be used to pay debt, public and private. It doesn't say you own it. It doesn't say, hey, this is yours now to do. No. The Federal Reserve can call back that money anytime it wants to. And when I say the Federal Reserve, I mean the people calling themselves the Federal Reserve, the people who say they're the Federal Reserve. That's the people who are saying I'm the Federal Reserve. That's their money. And these people are violent individuals. So you don't own that car. You don't own this property. Look at this right here. This guy who that's your desk, right? That's Nancy Pelosi's desk, but it's yours because you paid for it with your tax money. So you can put your foot on it. You paid for it. It's yours. This guy spent 3 months in jail. He got arrested, and he's got a trial coming up. Another guy takes Nancy Pelosi's nameplate. Who paid for her nameplate? She did. The United States government did. The people calling themselves the United States government paid for that nameplate. And who paid for them? You did. So you own the nameplate, right? Well, if you own it, how can you get charged with stealing? If you picked up Nancy Pelosi's nameplate that you paid for, how could you steal it if it's yours? You can't. And, in terms of the car being owned, go ahead and get in it and try to drive it. If that's your car and you paid for it, go ahead and get in it. You'll find out real quick it ain't your car. That's your street. You paid for it, right? Go try to walk somewhere, be somewhere where they don't want you to be. This is downtown Los Angeles. You try to walk on this street with these people, with these violencers around, what's going to happen to you? You're going to get violenced. You can't hear it in the background, but there's a guy over a loudspeaker saying, "This is an unlawful assembly. You must leave." But that's your street, right? You paid for it. You can be on it. See, that's the illusion. That's the absolute illusion that you can do whatever you want to. That you are free, that you own this street, that you can go wherever you want to. Look at this. You can go wherever you want to where they're not stopping you from going. You can walk right here, but try to walk right here. See what happens. But you own it. You paid for it. So why can't you walk right here? Why can't you walk right here? Because you don't own it. The ownership is the illusion. The people that own this world, they're violent individuals, okay? And they're only sharing it with you, and they're sharing it in a limited capacity based on what they want to do. That's it. They're only sharing it in a limited capacity for what it is they want to do. So if they don't want to share that with you, they're not going to. They don't want to share this part of the street with you, they ain't going to. Because these people who claim to be the city own this. These people who claim to be the state own this. These people who call themselves the United States government own this. These people who call themselves the city of Los Angeles own this. If you think about it, when someone says we're negotiating with the city, right? We're negotiating a business license. We're negotiating a contract. We're negotiating with the city. Who are you negotiating with? A city or people? People. So the city of Los Angeles doesn't exist. The city of Los Angeles does not exist. The city of Los Angeles cannot say anything. The city of Los Angeles cannot do anything. What can do something? People. People calling themselves the city of Los Angeles. So the city of Los Angeles can't have you arrested for stepping right here. The county of Los Angeles can't have you arrested for stepping right here. The state of California can't have you arrested for stepping right here. The United States government can't have you arrested for stepping right here. Who can? Somebody calling themselves the city of Los Angeles. Somebody calling themselves the mayor of Los Angeles. Somebody calling themselves the state of California. Somebody calling themselves the county of Los Angeles. Somebody calling themselves the United States government. A person. Okay? And these people are violent individuals. And if you touch their stuff, they will violence you. This guy right here touched Nancy Pelosi's desk. right? When she didn't want him to. And guess what happened? The violencers came in. The guys who are going to violence you, the violent individuals that we call cops, that we call policemen, that we call Capitol Police, that we call the FBI, that we call the DEA, that we call county sheriffs, that we call constables, that we call security guards, that we call state police, came in and violence this guy. If he didn't go with them, he would have been beaten. He got his freedom taken away. He spent 3 months in incarceration for putting his foot on this woman's desk, entering into her office space that who paid for? He did. He paid for it. So when you get down to the cult, I call them a cult because they're a cult. They started out as a cult 10,000, about 38,000 years ago. People who are calling themselves the United States government, okay, started out as a cult about 30,000 years ago. And that cult was located in what we call France, what we call Germany, what we call Spain right now. It was in that area right there. And then that cult just moved out over the eons. And now you're seeing that cult represent itself with this flag and with the name the United States government. And the person in that cult is Nancy Pelosi. And she has no problem calling this guy who's also in the cult to say, hey, yeah, you're good. You're good. See, all these guys are in the cult. Every single one of these guys is in the cult. So if any one of them undergoes any kind of problems, you're gonna see a massive response from the cult. So when you put your foot on this woman's desk, you had to answer to the cult. You have to answer to a cult member, and the cult members are violent. They're violent individuals. So you're answering to violence. So in terms of your ownership, their ownership of you is created through violence. 100%. Their ownership, the people who are calling themselves the city of Los Angeles, their ownership of Los Angeles involves violence. Their ownership of the county, the people who call themselves the county of LA, they own it through violence. This guy right here who says he owns his car and took your money to do it, number one, he took your money through a means of violence, right? Threatening you with violence if you didn't give it to him. Then when he spent your money on his car, he's telling you, if you get near my car, I'll hurt you. So don't think that, or it would be more advantageous for you as an individual to understand the world if you understood that you don't own almost anything. You're granted the right to own it by these cult members that call themselves the city, they call themselves the state, they call themselves the county, they call themselves the United States. And they own everything. They quote unquote own everything. And how do they own it? They own it through violence. So when you see these auditors, saying that we own this, it's state funded, just understand, auditors and people who are going to be auditors, and this, you don't own this. You don't own this building. You don't own this parking lot. You don't own this car. You don't own this street. You don't own any of it. These violent individuals took your money from you, or I took their money back from you, used it to buy this stuff, used it to make this stuff, used it to fund these people who are going to violence you. And, there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. You don't own any of it. You don't own this street. You don't own this car. You don't own this parking lot. You don't own this building. You don't own this car. You don't own this guy's flak jacket. You don't own his gun. You don't own anything. But yes, I agree 100%, First Amendment auditors, you did pay for it.